The ballroom looked less like a hotel than a courtroom that had been disguised with lights. Dozens of camera lenses pointed forward like rifles at rest. Screens above the stage showed rotating logos and graphics about the super fight, while the actual air smelled of cheap coffee, floor polish, and that faint iron tang of too many power cords heating under the stage. At the center of it all sat the champion. He carried himself the way only men do when they've lived too long inside applause. His suit was cut close, cufflinks gleaming under the fluorescence. Even before the microphone switched on, the room felt tilted toward him. The promoters knew it, the journalists felt it, and he, more than anyone, relished it. He leaned back, knuckles tapping the table, a smile stretched wide like a blade. When the moderator tried to begin with formalities, he simply raised his hand and spoke over him. His voice filled the room, amplified into a heavy, commanding echo. "She's weak. She wouldn't last 3 rounds with me." The word weak didn't just hang there. It landed like a thrown glass. Half the crowd laughed, the other half hissed, and the rest leaned forward in hungry silence. Journalists immediately shouted over each other. "Do you mean physically? Mentally?" Their hands shot up, microphones raised like weapons. He ignored them, savoring the moment. "You hear me?" he repeated, leaning closer to the mic. 3 rounds. That's generous. That's me giving her a chance." The cameras began searching for her, almost desperately. Ronda was not seated in the spotlight, not wrapped in sequins or positioned behind belts. She was off to the side, in a plain black track jacket, hair pulled back simply. She looked more like someone's training partner than the woman who had once defined her sport. Hands folded in her lap, posture relaxed, chin low, gaze fixed. Not on him, not on the crowd, but on some point no one else could see. The contrast was almost cruel. His voice filled the air, her silence filled the ground under it. The champion wasn't finished. He drummed his fingers once more, each tap timed like a metronome. She made her name twisting arms and choking necks. That's not fighting, that's shortcuts. Boxing? Boxing is 36 minutes of pain. 3-minute rounds where your lungs beg you to stop. It's truth, and she doesn't have it. He finally turned toward her, his head angling, but not enough to call it respect. "You know how long you'd last in my world? As long as it takes for my right hand to find your face. Not long enough to know what hit you." The room shifted. Phones were raised higher. Reporters jostled for position. The promoter at the far end of the table glanced nervously at the schedule. This was supposed to be a joint demonstration announcement, but the air was changing into something much sharper. Ronda hadn't moved. She hadn't smiled, hadn't frowned, hadn't given the cameras a single flicker they could feed into a headline. She sat as if stillness were a weapon sharper than his words. One old fight writer near the back, notebook balanced on a bony knee, muttered to his colleague, "He's poking the wrong bear." She never talks when she's right. She talks when she's done the champion. Sensing unease, pushed harder. "Look at her. She won't even look at me, because she knows." And that was when she lifted her eyes, just slightly. Enough for the LEDs to catch a glint, enough for the room to feel it. The champion's smile twitched. He covered it by chuckling, but the effort showed. Reporters exploded. "Ronda, do you have a response? Do you accept his challenge? Is boxing superior to MMA?" Their voices overlapped, desperate to capture the first word she'd utter. Microphones on long poles stretched toward her like fishing rods. She didn't reach for any of them. She didn't even shift her weight. She just looked at him, steadily, without a single blink to soften the line between them. The silence thickened, until even the audience at the back felt the need to fill it with coughs and whispers. He tried to reclaim it, leaning close, dropping his voice low so the mics picked up every grain. "Weak," he said again, softer, savoring it. "You're weak." The hiss of the sound system turned the word into a snake sliding through the air. The moderator scrambled to redirect. "We're here today to announce a joint demonstration, Boxing and Grappling Fundamentals. Something special for the fans." His words barely mattered. The crowd no longer believed in the word demonstration. They'd already been given something else: a wound, a challenge, a promise of collision. Somewhere in the second row, a young blogger shouted, "If she's so weak, why do you need 3 rounds?" Nervous laughter broke the tension, but only for a breath. The champion leaned into it, smiling. "Because I'm generous. Because I don't like short nights." That was when Ronda finally moved. She lifted one hand, slowly, brushing a loose strand of hair back behind her ear. An utterly ordinary gesture, yet it shifted the balance of the entire room. Every camera caught it, and for a split second, the champion's voice was no longer the loudest thing in the hall. A woman in the back whispered to no one, "She's going to answer in the ring." The feed director in the broadcast truck gave a single instruction: "Hold on her." And so they did. Cameras locked to her face as the champion repeated his favorite insult once more. And in that moment, the press conference ceased to be an advertisement. It became the spark of something personal, the beginning of a fight no one could dismiss as a stunt. Just wondering, where are you watching from? Write it down, Bello. By sunrise, the insult had traveled farther than the man who spoke it. Clips ricocheted across feeds, reduced to a single sentence: "She's weak." 3 rounds at best, 10 seconds long, cut tight for virality, played with captions that shouted louder than his voice. Talk radio dissected it with the same relish usually saved for politics, hosts laughing as they replayed his smirk. Podcasts built episodes overnight, branding it a feud before either side had acknowledged one. Barbershops, gas stations, break rooms, everywhere the word weak was said with his cadence, his swagger. He leaned into it. A Dawn television hit found him already gloved, shadowboxing under 2 bright lights in a rented gym. He sweat on cue, pausing between combinations to grin at the camera. 3 rounds is generous, he declared. That's me being polite. MMA isn't fighting. It's shortcuts. Boxing is real. Boxing is truth. The chyron beneath him read, "The champ, too strong for Rousey." She stayed invisible. No tweets, no press. Her profile pictures didn't change, her pages remained blank. The only sighting came from a blurry phone clip. Ronda alone in a warehouse gym, midnight light slicing through dusty windows, repeating uchikomi into a rope knotted to a steel beam. No commentary, no words, just the rhythm of practice, a silent promise. And that silence unsettled more than his noise. Fans debated in comment sections, some calling her finished, others saying the quiet meant something heavier. One hashtag crowned him the last true fighter. Another resurrected her highlight reels stitched together with heavy bass. Every throw and submission punctuated with captions. "Never forget." Then the old voices chimed in. A cutman retired 20 years said on local radio, "He's inviting danger." Different sports make different lies about time. A trainer with no social media presence, interviewed in a dim gym office, added, "You don't play with gravity." She knows how to use it. He doesn't. Their words didn't trend, but found their way into the ears of those who still cared about outcomes more than spectacle. Magazines published think pieces. One quoted 3 ex-champions, each in different corners of the sport. The first, "She's not talking now. That's when she's at her most dangerous." The second, "He thinks noise wins. She fights in silence." The third, "Crowds don't choose sides. They choose moments, and moments never stay loyal." He wasn't listening. A midday presser showed him again, this time in a branded tracksuit, pacing in front of a logo wall. "She'll break on the stool," he promised. 12 minutes max, and she folds." He laughed long and loud, the crowd laughing with him because the room demanded it, but the sound carried an aftertaste of obligation. Meanwhile, in a corner of the internet no network noticed, a shaky interview appeared. A regional station had cornered her near a whiteboard scrawled with training schedules. The audio buzzed, the light hummed. She stood in plain clothes, face calm. "I don't argue with people who shout louder," she said. "I answer the ones who step closer." Then silence. 90 seconds long, yet it traveled. To late-shift nurses, to truckers on break, to the quiet glow of phones in parked cars. For them, it didn't feel like promotion. It felt like a weather change. Promoters smelled a payday. Within days, they announced a joint event. Skills Summit. Boxing and grappling. A fan experience. The font was neutral, but the tension wasn't. "A shared demonstration," the MC insisted, voice quivering with careful optimism. "Respectful exchange." No one in the audience believed him. They weren't buying tickets for respect. They wanted collision. He answered with another montage. Pad work, sweat flying, the caption, "Real rounds." Real fighters. His grin wide, his wink sharp. The numbers soared. Her answer came indirectly. A fan posted a grainy clip through the glass of a gym door. Ronda at the bag, not hitting hard, but stopping an inch before impact, holding the position, glove trembling with control. A coach's voice murmured something unheard. She nodded once. The bag swayed like a pendulum, deciding on gravity. The crowd, the third hero, turned restless. Comments under the event page demanded, "Don't hold back. Make him respect it. End the talk." Others pleaded for restraint. "It's an exhibition." They were drowned out, mocked for using the word demo. A father uploaded a photo of his daughter shadowboxing in the driveway with the caption, "Respect matters." Within an hour, strangers were arguing under it about whose respect counted. Talk shows booked him nightly. He declared, "I'm elevating her sport. She should thank me in the next breath. No hard feelings until she breaks." The contradiction didn't cost him. Crowds forgave contradictions if they came wrapped in charisma. Columnists debated her silence. One argued she was obligated to respond if she wanted relevance. The backlash came fast. She already had responded, just not in his language. Others compiled lists of every man who had underestimated her, tallying who'd paid and who hadn't. Lists rarely change minds, but they remind people who've already chosen a side. Days blurred. Tickets vanished before the billboard lit. Scalpers made fortunes. Fans drew imaginary fight diagrams over leaked seating charts. Commentators rehearsed their narratives. If he dominated, it proved boxing supreme. If she survived, it proved her resilience. If she won, well, no one wanted to finish that thought. He strutted for the cameras, rehearsing victory poses, telling reporters, "She's coming into my house." No one asked who had built the floor under the lights. She trained in quiet rotations. Partners left the mat bruised but thoughtful, nodding in ways that betrayed surprise. Between rounds, she sat on a towel, no stool, eyes closed, breathing steady. Asked about preparation, she said only, "Hold your shape." It sounded like life advice or a threat, depending on who heard it. And so the stage was set. The date loomed. The language remained demonstration, but everyone knew. Demonstrations don't sell out arenas. The arena looked less like a sports venue and more like an ancient amphitheater dressed in LED screens and steel trusses. Outside, lines of people curled around the block, shuffling in the evening air thick with fried food and exhaust. Voices rose in waves, some mocking, some chanting, some arguing about who would teach the lesson tonight. Inside, the hum of anticipation was so dense it felt physical, pressing down from the rafters. This was supposed to be a friendly showcase, a skills summit. That word had been printed on every poster and announced on every broadcast. But no one believed it anymore. The air smelled not of respect, but of verdicts. And verdicts are always louder when a crowd is hungry. When the champion appeared, the building erupted like a match to gasoline. His robe glittered, his hood pulled back slow for effect. He stopped halfway down the ramp, tore off one glove, and flung it into the crowd. A brawl broke out for it, bodies lunging, and he pointed, laughing, as if he'd orchestrated the chaos. Cameras magnified his grin until it filled every screen. He basked in it, owning the noise as though it were part of his training camp. Then the lights cut, and the noise thinned. Her arrival was the opposite of spectacle. Ronda stepped from a side tunnel. No music, no entourage, no smoke. Just her footsteps echoing on concrete. She wore a plain hoodie, tape showing at her wrists. For a moment, the crowd didn't cheer or boo. They hushed, instinctively raising phones, as if silence itself was worth capturing. She looked up to the highest seats, eyes scanning the faces barely visible in shadow, then back to the mat. When she ducked through the ropes, it was with the efficiency of repetition, no wasted motion. She handed off her hoodie, stood tall in the corner, and waited. The champion tried to reclaim the rhythm. He strutted toward her corner, too close, leaning in with lips moving just far enough from the mic to keep it private. His grin told the crowd it was an insult. "You think they came for you?" She didn't move, didn't blink. For the first time his smile twitched, and he turned it into a laugh, spreading his arms like an entertainer caught in his own act. The referee called them center ring. He recited the script. Technical demonstration, no unnecessary force, respect at all times. But his tone betrayed doubt. Neither fighter looked at him. Their eyes were locked on each other, hers steady, his restless. Chants started high in the rafters. Ronda! R-O-N-D-A. They clashed with champion from the opposite side. The chants collided mid-air, tangled into a roar that vibrated through the floor. Their first real exchange wasn't physical. He leaned in louder this time so the cameras could catch it. "This isn't your cage. This is my ring." He snapped his gloves together, the crack like a gunshot. Her answer was silence, and it landed heavier than words. The bell clanged. Officially a demonstration. Unofficially, something else entirely. He moved first, all theater, shuffling, feinting, throwing lazy jabs at the air. After each, he grinned and gestured to the crowd, demanding applause. Some cheered, others booed, but the volume stayed thick. She moved like a different species. Small, precise steps, body angled, hands close, no extra gesture, no wasted flourish. She wasn't performing, she was measuring. At one point he lunged, swung wide, deliberately missing by inches, then stepped back and spread his arms. "See?" he shouted, grin flashing. The crowd laughed nervously, but she only tilted forward, eyes fixed, making it clear she had chosen not to move. That restraint cracked louder than any counterpunch. Gasps rippled through the lower seats. Phones zoomed tighter on her face, capturing the cold stare that had unseated his theatrics. People who'd arrived expecting comedy shifted in their seats, suddenly uneasy. The champion tried to reset, bouncing, smiling, jawing at the front row. But the spell had changed. When he lunged again, the crowd didn't roar. They waited, and waiting turned louder than cheering. The first round hadn't even ended, yet the arena was already different. It wasn't a showcase anymore, and no one believed in demonstrations. Every lens, every chant, every heartbeat was locked on the collision that felt inevitable. And as the bell echoed, one question hung heavier than the noise. Which would give first? The man who needed the crowd, or the woman who could silence it? He opened like a man rehearsing comedy. Loose footwork, shoulders rolling, grin stretched wide enough for the cameras. The first minute looked like theater. Light jabs thrown short, exaggerated steps, pauses where he bowed slightly to the audience as though this were cabaret. The crowd rewarded it with laughter and whistles. But arrogance has weight. It seeped from him in every exaggerated motion, and soon the demonstration began to smell like something else. His shots crept closer. A jab stopped a hair from her cheekbone. The crowd laughed harder, chanting, "End it quick!" It was supposed to be mock encouragement, but it carried an edge, as if they wanted to see a public execution. She stayed steady. Ronda's movement was stripped of drama. Small pivots, subtle shifts, guard tight. Her silence pressed against him harder than any counter. When he swung big and missed by design, she didn't react, didn't give him the optics he wanted. Her refusal to play his rhythm was louder than a punch. That refusal burned him. His theatrics grew sharper. He cracked his gloves together, barked, "Where's your strength, Ronda?" and dropped his hands to his sides in mock invitation. The crowd roared approval, half joking, half demanding violence. She stared back, chin level, eyes calm. The stillness spread like cold water. Then it happened. A slip. He lunged with another demonstration right, a sweeping shot meant for air, but his foot skidded on sweat hidden in the canvas. Only a fraction of a second, but enough. His body jolted off balance, his posture no longer immaculate. The gasp that rippled through the lower rows wasn't for his punch, it was for that tiny crack. He tried to cover it, clapping his gloves together and grinning like it was part of the act. "Easy," he shouted. But the grin looked tighter now, and the voice had to work harder. Ronda didn't answer. Her silence turned the stumble into evidence. The referee's warning, "Keep it clean," was swallowed by the crowd. Noise climbed again, but different this time. It was no longer carefree cheering, it was hungry. People wanted something real. They wanted the moment when theater broke. The champion sensed it. He pushed forward, using his body like a wall, shoulder heavy, glove tapping at her guard harder than demonstration allowed. He leaned in with the bully's closeness, trying to force reaction. She stepped aside with barely a breath of movement. His shoulder carved empty air. The audience groaned, half laugh, half shock. He spread his arms to recover, eyes to the rafters, pretending to joke. The laughter that came back was thinner. Phones were trained not on him now, but on her face. Cold, expressionless, fixed. The camera feeds caught it too, and up on the jumbotrons the contrast looked devastating. His performance against her stillness. The chants began to split. "Ronda! Ronda!" rose from one side, clashing with "Champion" on the other. It wasn't playful anymore. It was tribal. The building vibrated with it. He tried a final flourish, lunging forward to pat her shoulder as if to teach her, but the gesture was too close to a shove, and everyone knew it. Her body shifted, subtle as a door unlocking. The referee half-stepped in, but froze. The moment was balanced on a knife edge. And then the spell broke. His hand reached out, overconfident, careless, meant as theater, but read as provocation. Her weight dropped half an inch. Her stance settled. The audience, thousands of throats, inhaled at once. For the first time all night, the crowd wasn't laughing. They were waiting. The air inside the arena thickened until it felt like syrup. Every motion seemed slowed, magnified. He strutted forward again, shoulders rolling, his grin back in place but stretched too thin, like paint over rust. His right hand floated up lazily, the way a man gestures when he thinks the moment is already his. The glove hovered toward her shoulder, supposedly demonstrational, but carrying the arrogance of a touch that claimed ownership. The crowd knew it. They surged to their feet in one tidal motion, the sound of thousands of chairs scraping at once. Phones lifted, screens glinting. From the cheap seats to the floor rows, anticipation burned. Ronda moved in the opposite direction of drama. No swing, no roar. She pivoted. The motion was quiet, pure geometry. Her hips turned, one arm framed, her balance coiled like she'd been waiting for nothing but this. And then it came. The single, seamless gesture. A shoulder drop, a twist of her torso, and the champion's weight betrayed him. For a heartbeat, his body looked confused, as though he couldn't decide whether it was still standing. Then the canvas accepted him. A heavy thud, amplified by microphones, ricocheted through the hall. The sound hit harder than any punch. Silence. Utter, absolute silence. Even the cameras seemed to pause. The champion lay sprawled, blinking at the lights above. His arms flailed for half a second, trying to turn the fall into theater, but it was too late. The image was burned into the crowd's eyes. The golden champion on his back, felled not by brute force, but by precision. Her stance told the truth. She hadn't stumbled into it. She hadn't even exerted herself. She stood above him, breathing evenly, her posture the same as before, like she'd simply erased an equation that didn't balance. It took the audience a moment to process. Then came the eruption. Some screamed in disbelief, hands over mouths. Others roared approval so violently the rafters shook. The noise wasn't unified anymore. It tore the building into factions. Shock, exhilaration, denial, triumph. On press row, cameras fired like gunfire, flashes popping in rapid succession. A journalist dropped his pen and fumbled for his phone, muttering, "Unbelievable." The champion scrambled to his feet. His smile fought to return, but his lips quivered at the edges. Sweat gleamed on his brow under the lights. He spread his arms again, forcing laughter. "A fluke!" he barked, his voice cracking. "That was nothing." But the crowd had seen. They'd seen the stumble, the pivot, the inevitability of it. No speech could repaint that. He bounced on his toes, trying to shake off the crack in his confidence, but his rhythm was broken. His eyes darted, not just at her, but at the crowd, searching for affirmation that no longer belonged to him. She gave him nothing, no smirk, no taunt, just that stillness, the kind of calm that multiplies the panic of the other. The referee gestured for them to reset, but no one in the building believed it was still an exhibition. Phones streamed live feeds across the world. Millions watching had already rebranded this as a fight. He stepped forward again, quicker this time, anger bleeding into his footwork. He feinted left, lunged right, trying to shove her shoulder again to reclaim control. She sidestepped, weightless, and his glove caught only air. A groan rolled through the crowd, deep and resonant, as though thousands had recognized the futility at once. He growled audibly, an animal sound more than a performance. "Stand still!" he shouted, frustration cracking his voice. But she was still, still in the way that trees are still, while storms tear around them. From the back rows came a chant, raw and guttural. "Ronda! Ronda!" It clashed with jeers of "Champion!" But the rhythm was shifting. Her silence had started to own the building. The champion lunged again, wild this time. It wasn't a show anymore. It was desperation wrapped in sweat. His glove stretched toward her face, fast enough to blur. She caught the angle before the punch had even traveled half its distance. A sharp pivot, her arm locking around his, her body turning as if tracing a circle only she could see. His momentum fed her leverage, and once again his own force threw him downward. This time he landed harder, body curling awkwardly, legs tangling as he hit. The crowd screamed. The sound fractured into 1,000 shards, some triumphant, some horrified, some almost pleading for him to stop humiliating himself. He slammed his glove against the mat, rolled to his knees, and forced a laugh, but his eyes betrayed panic. "Accident," he spat. "Just accident." Nobody bought it. The camera zoomed on his face, sweat dripping into his eyes, his jaw clenched too tight to hide the strain. He looked less like a champion and more like a man trying to claw back dignity that had already slipped away. She didn't advance. She simply waited, centered, her chest rising and falling with steady rhythm. The referee's voice wavered. "Continue." It didn't sound like authority, it sounded like hesitation. The crowd surged louder, the chants of her name gaining dominance. He heard it too. His shoulders tensed, his movements lost crispness, jerks replacing flow. And then it hit him. Not the mat, not her grip, but the realization crawling across his face for everyone to see. He was losing, not in points or punches, but in presence. The cameras caught it. His mask had slipped. And in that instant, the question hung over the roaring arena. Would he risk everything on one final reckless charge, or crumble beneath the silence pressing in around him? He tried to staple the grin back on his face, but it slipped. His lips twitched, stretched, collapsed again. What came out was panic disguised as bravado. He circled too fast, feet smacking the canvas, breath ragged enough for the microphones to catch. "You want real? You want more?" he barked, but his voice betrayed him, sharp at the edges. She stood in profile, balanced, unhurried. The calm that once looked like patience now carried authority. She didn't need to move. Every second she stayed still made his movements more frantic. A shout from the mezzanine cut through the roar. "She's stronger than you!" Another voice followed. "Respect her!" Simple words, but they landed harder than fists. He stiffened. His rhythm stuttered. He punched at air. 1, 2, 3. Fast, but sloppy. She slid aside with half steps, not dramatic, just exact. The crowd groaned each time he missed, the sound growing heavier. He tried body pressure, shoulder first, but she let him collide with emptiness. His stumble was obvious, and his face tightened at the laughter it triggered. The chants tipped. "Ronda! Ronda!" rolled down from the rafters, drowning out the fragments of his name. He heard it, and his eyes darted, searching for support that wasn't there. His hands drifted wide, chin high, habits breaking under pressure. So he gambled. He charged, crooked and desperate, arms spread as if to cage her. The crowd screamed, not with joy but with dread, knowing what was about to happen. She didn't need force, she needed inches. A turn of the hips, a pivot that drew him deeper. Her arms framed him, guiding his momentum into betrayal. His body lifted, weightless for a fraction, then crashed. The mat thundered under him, a single sound that made the arena shudder. He scrambled, tried to rise, but she was already there. Her grip settled, hips locking angles, control snapping shut like a lid. His thrashing turned into gasps, each breath harsher than the last. The crowd hushed, leaning into the sound of him failing. It wasn't brutal. That was the worst part. Her technique was clean, merciless in its precision. He was trapped, fully visible, yet untouched by violence. She could finish. Everyone knew it. Children in the front row leaned forward, eyes wide. The referee bent closer, ready to end it. He bucked once more, a wild, ugly movement. She adjusted, and the fight drained out of him like air leaving a tire. His glove hovered, ready to tap, but froze. She leaned down. The camera zoomed, microphones straining, but her voice was too soft. Only he heard it. A few words, no more. His eyes widened, his body stilled, the anger gone in an instant. His breathing slowed into defeat. She held for one more beat, then released. Mercy with control. He rolled to his side, clutching his arm, staring at the canvas as if it might swallow him. The crowd erupted. Cheers, sobs, disbelief all at once. Half the arena stood, the other half sat frozen, trying to process what they had seen. She rose without showmanship, palms open, steady. No gloating, no celebration. Her victory was silence. Cameras swiveled to her face, but she gave them nothing. Just the same cold focus that had been there all along. He sat hunched, eyes low. A chant for him tried to start, faltered, and died. Even his supporters couldn't protect him now. The referee raised her hand, saying words no one heard. Flashes lit the ring, capturing frames that would travel worldwide. In the stands, a child tugged at his mother's sleeve. What did she say to him? The woman shook her head because she was wondering the same. On the walkout, an old writer scribbled a line. Sometimes the loudest blow is whispered. He capped his pen and watched the crowd file out, buzzing with a single mystery. Not the throw, not the hold, the whisper. And maybe that's what you're left with now. The question of what words could shatter a man built on noise. Because whatever she said, it found the one place his armor didn't cover. And from tonight on, his story will carry that silence.